I was trying to remember for how long I know these guys, and it is like 5 or 6 years. And when they approached me, like if I'm interested in some new method as a sports psychologist, I was wondering why I need another tool, because in psychology there is a lot of questionnaires, a lot of assessment tools, and why I need another one. Because how many of you are coaches? A lot of? Are there any coaches around here? No? Yes? So what are you people, not coaches? Okay? Like this, okay, I will not sing, don't worry. So are there any coaches around here? Or just mental coaches? Sports coaches? Okay. A lot, okay. So anyway, what we all need to know in sports situation is who is prepared, mentally prepared to give his best and show everything that he was training or she was training at the sports field. And that is not that easy, like some of sports coaches sometimes or often, I must say, think that it is like straight line. They train, and whatever they do at training, they will show it 100% at the sports field. And we all know that that is not what is happening. So there is a concept in psychology of mental resilience, like capacity to be adapted to stressful situation, to not fail when it is important, and so on. And of course we all like to see that kind of athletes, but that is not case very often. And some research in psychology say it is in less of 50% of situations, so it is really a lot. And now to get back to my main thinking at the times when I met guys from CI method is in SportMind is how can this tool help me in what I do in practice? Because usually what I learned from my professors and mentors is that how we do in sports psychology, we take our questionnaires, enter a locker room half an hour before competition, do tests, then analyze, and so on. And in real situation, that is not possible all the time. That's first, because I don't know many coaches that are really glad when I came up with papers and pens and said, can I just now make assessment? And they say, what do you think you're doing? They should go and play now. They cannot fill your questionnaires. So that's not easy to apply. And on the other side, what is also very tricky is that questionnaires are not always enough. And how is that so? Because whenever you ask a question, it is something that usually appeals to conscious level of functioning. Like if you ask athletes, are you ready? They will say, yes, of course I am. Sometimes because they are really ready, and in many times because they want to be ready. Because I really haven't met athletes in my whole career that doesn't want to win. Maybe there is, of course, some psychological concept that there is a fear of failure, that fear of success, and so on. So it is not always like that clear and straight line. But anyway, no one is in sport that really does not want to win in what he or she is competing. So we cannot say that athletes really don't want to do their job best when they are in competitive situation. But how can we help them, and how can we help them to really show all their potentials and everything that they were trained and worked hard for days, months, years, and it's not easy job anyway. The question is, of course, how SportMind can help in that. And I will tell you now about some of my practical experience and how I was thinking about all this. Like, this is my graph, like how I divided athletes. In my experience and mental readiness and insight in if they are ready or not. Of course, there is two types we can say that are very high in their insight, like they are, of course we mostly like this one. They are ready and they are aware that they are ready for competition. They are most resilient, and I'm really sorry that one of my athletes is not here today with us, who was brilliantly resilient, as George said at the times. One of medalist in Kayak canoe sprint, Olivera Moldovan. She was a really extraordinary example of really this one. And usually we don't have much to do in sports psychology with this kind of athletes. But it is good to see who is really that one, especially in sports teams, because when I will talk to you about some of my research results in handball, it is very good to know in the sports team who is this one. Because when it is, for example, penalty shooting or something that is really important in game, it is good to rely on this one. If we can, of course, diagnose that athlete. The other one is the one that is not ready and is aware that is not ready. We can do something also with these athletes because they don't feel that they are mentally ready, and they are very well known with that because it is in situations like when someone was injured or is not in good sports form or so on, and this one is also easy to handle to coaches and to sports psychologists too. But what we have a lot of problem is with these two categories of athletes. The one that is ready but is not aware that he is ready, and the other one that is not ready and not aware that is ready. And especially if you have a player that is this one not ready and not aware and wants to play, or is a key player, or is captain, or is a star in a team, it is not always easy to handle this kind of athlete. So did you ever experience some sports star that is not ready and not aware and wants to play? Well, probably yes. And you don't have to prove to that person that you should not be in the game all the time because that's not your best. And they will say, no, I feel good, I can do that, you have to trust me. And you don't have any really proof to reach that person really, to be aware that that's not his or her best at that moment. So how can SportMind help us in those situations is at first to have some objective proof of mental state. Because in my experience, when there is questionnaires and so on, they would say, well, these questions are all the same. But when it is about colors, they usually don't know what it is all about. They can ask, oh, colors, this is good. Should we choose red or black? Where, honestly, I don't know, so I'm in red and black today. And they cannot, that obviously, of course, guess, or there is no way that they can manipulate this test. Even if they can do that, we can have that data also in results. And now I came up to mind that I didn't tell you that this is about energy test, mental or psychic energy. That was my favorite here, because that is what is important in competitive situation. But if you are familiar with SportMind, I guess that you already know what I'm talking about. So how can we use this tool is, of course, to map these persons in a team and to have a really objective argument like, look, these are your results, and the test shows that you are not at your best now. And it is different than if coach says that, like based on his or her experience, or if sports psychologist comes and say, I think you're not at your very best now. And they will say, no, I am, you have to believe me, you didn't see that correct. Actually, I'm full of confidence and very focused on what I have to do. But when we have tests, and when we have tests that really measures actual state, then we really have a good starting point to try to change something. And when we have, what did I do? When we have this category that is ready and not aware, we can really instantly raise self-confidence with the results from test. We say, okay, but the test says that you are okay and that you can do that. And that is really like some good injection of self-confidence to those athletes. And they say, okay, so if test says that I'm okay and psychologists think that I can do it, I probably can do it. My experience is that we can instantly make intervention in this situation when we can map that with energy test and show them results of what we get. And now the trickiest kind of athletes that are not ready and not aware. What we can do and what we can offer to sports coaches is maybe to cut off that person from team, which is not easy, of course, especially when it is someone who is star in a team and believes that he or she is okay. But anyway, with results, we can try to, of course, talk with that athlete and to really come to a real mental state and try to raise self-awareness and try to raise some mental efforts to overcome all those maybe parts of personal functioning that is not best in the team. I have I now can remember one good experience from a handball national team that I was working for 3 years. There were one really great player and she was injured all the time, but a really great person, very cooperative, and she, according to this and according to her, let's say, self-awareness when we were talking about that, was not good, in a good shape, not physically and mentally, and it goes together, of course. It is very hard that injured player can be really good in head at the same time, but when we anytime when we apply this tool and when we were talking about results, like, okay, you are not good, she would really put a lot of effort to overcome that fact, and she was excellent all the time. So there are, of course, good examples of this one, but what is, like I said, not a very good situation for none of us in sport is when we cannot reach this kind of person. So there are some examples also of that. This is, of course, one of not good profile of energy test before a competition. I guess that you are familiar with these outputs of tests. So when we get something like this is not good. Of course, everything is high except these two parameters that we want, like match and training, that we want to be very high. And this one should be one that is better. I couldn't find any better at this moment, but there are, of course, some better profiles of this. And I will tell you now in more specific, like tell names and situations in past few years. And it turned up to be all from 2014. This is one example from Kayak canoe sprint, and these two ladies, like one of them should be with us today, but I'm really sorry that she's not. And these are results, like their profiles. Of course, what is this? Who is not familiar with this sport? This is like two persons in the same boat trying to compete on 500 meters sprint. And it is very important that they are really very alike one to another, not just in their technique of rowing, but also they have to be equally mentally ready. If someone goes out, they cannot do anything. And when we start to apply this method, we find that one of these is excellent and the other one is like with a lot of troubles before competition. And this was my really first big applying of CA method, because what was happening before 2014, I was working with these girls for 2 years before that. And what happened is that we were working on regular basis. We learned some mental techniques, like how should they think, feel, behave, whatever in a sports competitive situation. And when the race starts, what happened on the water far away is that this one, like Nicolina, she was vomiting, she was feeling very bad. And the day before competition, we were applying questionnaires, we were applying all tools that we can, and everything was fine. When I was talking to her, she would say, no, I'm good, I feel really great, I'm ready. And something unexpected would happen on a day of race, morning of race, and when they are at the start point. So the trick was how to discover when she will be bad at start line. because they were really working hard. We were working hard on mental preparation, but something was missing and something was there that we cannot diagnose at the time. And when George and people from SportMind showed up, I said, okay, I will try that first with this one systematically. And on this 2014, I was applying all tests, all 2 major competitions, European and World Championship. And what we got in results is that you can see here this red one is Nicolina, blue one is Olivera, the resilient one. So this main parameters like training and match was always lower in Nicolina's results. And that was a sign that even when she believes she's okay, that she's not okay. And then we started to develop some mental strategy like for just in case, if you don't be okay, you should do this, this, and that. So we really succeeded in this year because they won 3 medals that year, and Nicolina was female athlete of Serbia because she had 2 medals with her sister and 1 on her own at World Championship. So what other tests couldn't help us, and even her own insight, we get help from SportMind method. And what is also another contribution of this method is that sometimes, or maybe very often, we got different results from some traditional psychological tests and from CA method. And the question is, what is valid? Of course, everything gives us some point of view of that situation, but CI method contributes in different way, and in a lot of situations it is very much in accordance of what we can see or what athletes can tell us when we are talking to them. And of course, when we have some argument on test results, that is even better. But what was really great, just to get back to Kayak now, what was great in this year that really when we were systematically applying and following how results are each day, we did test each day, it was like 20 days of testing every day, so we can see how all parameters goes up and down and what really happens just before competition. And to now get back to that story from beginning, we can take tablet or even laptop and go to locker room just 10 minutes before competition. Coach will not mind, and they will say, okay, if that is not something that will disturb athletes, but colors cannot disturb them, of course, because they don't even know what it is all about. They just say, okay, the same words every day, but it doesn't matter. We always got results that it is at the specific moment. So this was really one positive example of how we apply this and get results that we want. But there is another not so good example, not so good in results, sports results, is from handball. And this year I was, and 1 year before and after, I was working with national handball team. And I choose to tell you now something about specific results from European Championship in 2014 also, because that was really great failure of national team. And why? Because of that key player that was not ready and not aware, that category we can remember. So this was the first game at the championship where Serbia was playing against Montenegro, so very, very good team in female handball. And we lost like 3 points, but why this is good? This is some of better profiles of captain of the team. So we can see here, of course, that besides this 2 that is good, there were, of course, capacity to overcome risk, to take effort, and to feel, but also overcome tiredness. This was a situation of captain of the team. She was also injured a long time before this championship, but she decided to play. And since she's a really great star in handball, no one could say, okay, you will not play, because in my country at least it is not possible with sports stars. And the national team coach, he decided to believe her that she is ready. Before this game, we of course did SportMind diagnostics, and these results convinced us, at least me, that she can manage this game. And she was really good. She, I think, scored like 8 goals or something, which was very good. She was dealing very good in many situations, and it was really pity that we lost this game because when we take into account that captain and some other key players were injured, this was one really good game. But what happened next is that everyone was starting to believe that she's back and that we will win everything else because this was warm-up and it is just a matter of time when she will do her best. She will do that in the next game. But before next game, of course, we also did SportMind diagnostics. It was a game against France. And the captain's profile was like this. And I was really worried. I told coach, I don't think that she can do the same again. And he was like, no, she just got back. She can do that. I know when she's like this on first game, second game, it will be her best. And she was, of course, very self-confident that she can do that. But totally opposite. And let's say unfortunately, but CA method was right. That was one of worst games in her whole career, maybe. She didn't score like 1 or 2 goals, but lost like 10 balls, and many actions was failure because of her, and she was not ready. This was example that we really get accurate measure from CA method, and what happened when no one believes that someone is not ready, and when athlete is not really ready to consider that this is his or her actual mental state. But what is of course good news that we can always reach good and actual state with this method. So this was, let's say, short presentation, although I promised more time, but you have more time for questions. There are other, of course, examples of good and bad outcomes according to tests, but whenever athletes and sports coaches really wanted to listen to results and to let me help them in that situation, we did good, but they're not always open to what we can offer them and based on these results. What I'm also happy when I use this method is that I have lots of experience now, and I can maybe sometimes or often tell what test will tell me, but I like when I have support in something that is objective measure, when I can say, okay, but we have test results. Everyone wants to be measured, so when we have all those physical tools to measure everything in their body, it is good when we have tool to measure what is going on in their head. So victory is in the head. Of course, head is not enough, but as we say in sports psychology, when head is not 100% ready, then everything else will not possibly be shown at the sports field. So now you may ask questions.
Are there any questions from your audience? I have one. Are you able to reveal another personality in the team before the game? Or before this particular game of handball, only the captain was the one person who go through the diagnostics?
That's a good question. Whole team, of course, went through diagnostics, and especially in handball, there were good examples. Like there were one player that was always shooting penalties, and she was very good in that. But I remember one game when she had really results, and I didn't have idea like this when I was just watching her that she will fail or not. But when she started to do penalties, she was missing. And I told coach, please don't let her do that again. And he said, but she's good in that. She always good that the good way, but that was not her moment for that. So there were good examples when coach wants to listen to advice, and some of games, not on this championship, but on some other competitions, went really good when we used this. Of course, we also had, I think, bronze medal at some Universiade in South Korea or something with that national selection, we also I had good cooperation with coaches, and they wanted to listen everything. So who should do free penalty shooting or free throws or whatever. So yes, there is examples. Yes, good question. I forgot shooters. We had a lot of gathering data and applying this with the shooters. It is different, and what we got with the CA method is that there is difference between individual and team sport athletes, which is very interesting because it turned out that the team players are more mentally resilient generally because maybe they have divided the responsibility, or they don't have to be, it is not that everything is on their own all the time, so that they can share responsibility, hide sometimes when necessary. But shooters were more mentally sensitive, let's say it like that. They can be more anxious in that competitive situation, but what we also get based on CA method, that with the experience, they become more mentally strong. And especially when we were giving them feedback with this, it also helped a lot. So I got these two situations with medals, and because there were a lot of shooters, the whole national team, and it's like 20 shooters. So I didn't think I will have that much time to discuss every shooter, but that was also very, very interesting when we were applying that.
I'm from the basketball here as a coach. Going back to your second example, actually, I would love to ask you, you diagnose, you analyze that the captain is not ready, let's say, but how do you work actually at the moment, or are you able to work with that player to get back to the game? Because it's not the game that you do any other sport. It has a time. It's 1 hour of the game, so you still have time. Do you work with that, and how?
Yes, good question, because we have time and we don't have time at the same time. We have some space to do in this. If you ask me about this specific example, it was not possible to do anything, because that was that kind of personality that was very like in some self-confidence that was not accurate. And there are some people that you can do something. I mentioned one of also players that was not ready, injured, and so on. So in those situations, we always come up to test results. Like, see, I usually show them results. Like, you see, this should be higher, and this is not. We have to do something about that. And most of them, usually, when they see something as objective measure, would say, okay, I will put some effort. I say them you have to put your conscious effort to overcome that, to try to put aside everything and just to focus on what is important, of course. In general, that is advice, but of course it depends on each person. But there is always, and that is really a problem, like this, our captain's example, that whatever you do or say or try to do, they are like a zombie state, like you cannot reach them, and whether they are in good or in their bad mental state, of course when they're in bad we're concerned, but there are, I must say, some examples when we maybe cannot do anything, but again, based on these results, we can use that as material for further mental work with those people. Like, okay, when the game is over, when competition is over, when we analyze and try to make strategy for another game, we say, okay, you believe that you were okay, but we had this and it was not okay. Will you believe me now and try to do something to change that? And usually then, if not immediately, in next step we can make a lot of improvement in that sense. But psychology is not like magic. You cannot always change everything at the moment, unfortunately. Although many athletes and coaches say, like, okay, psychologist is with us. We have now wizards. We will do everything. But mental work is also like training, like hard work. And when we have some tool to measure it, it's good because it is good starting point to make corrections. Even if not at that specific moment when we want, then in very next step.
Any other question? Please don't hesitate.
You can ask later also with coffee, but
After the next presentation, there will be a coffee break, so you will be able to ask Marijana questions.
So you have time to think.
Okay, if there's no more question, please applause for our first international guest. Thank you, Marijana.
Thank you.